Unraveling the history. The war in Ukraine. The conflict in Ukraine is a complex and ongoing crisis that has gripped the nation and captured the attention of the world since 2014. It is a multifaceted struggle involving political, ethnic, and geopolitical dimensions. At its core, the conflict centers on the struggle for control over various regions in Ukraine, most notably the annexation of Crimea by Russia and the ongoing conflict in the eastern region of Donbass. Understanding this conflict requires a nuanced exploration of the historical, cultural, and geopolitical factors that have contributed to its escalation. To truly grasp the nature and significance of the conflict in Ukraine, it is crucial to delve into its historical context. History serves as the foundation upon which this conflict is built, shaping the identities, grievances, and aspirations of the parties involved. The historical context provides valuable insights into the complex web of factors that have fueled this conflict, including a. Geography and demographics. Ukraine, situated in Eastern Europe, boasts a diverse and extensive landscape that has played a crucial role in shaping its history. It is the largest country in Europe by land area and is known for its fertile plains, the Carpathian Mountains in the west, and the Black Sea coastline in the south. The nation's strategic location has made it a historical crossroads for trade, culture, and conquest. Its demographic makeup includes a blend of ethnic Ukrainians, ethnic Russians, and various minority groups, contributing to its rich cultural tapestry and, at times, complex identity dynamics. b. Historical roots of Ukrainian identity. Kievan Rus. The roots of Ukrainian identity can be traced back to the medieval state of Kievan Rus, 9th to 13th centuries. At its zenith, Kievan Rus encompassed a vast territory, including parts of modern-day Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus. Kiev, the capital, was a thriving center of trade, culture, and governance. This era laid the foundation for the East Slavic identity, from which both Ukrainian and Russian identities emerged. Cossack Hetmanate. In the 17th century, the Cossack Hetmanate emerged as a semi-autonomous region within the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, with its center in modern-day Ukraine. The Cossacks, a warrior class known for their fierce independence, played a pivotal role in defending their lands and culture. The Hetmanate represents a crucial phase in the development of Ukrainian national consciousness, fostering a sense of unity and self-governance. 3. World War I and Russian Revolution. A. Ukraine during WWI. World War I, which raged from 1914 to 1918, had a profound impact on Ukraine, then part of the Russian Empire. Ukraine was not only a significant battleground, but also a region where political aspirations began to crystallize. Key points during this period include frontline conflict. Ukraine found itself on the eastern front of WWI, with extensive battles fought on its territory. This had devastating consequences for the population, including loss of life, destruction of infrastructure, and economic hardships. Emergence of nationalism. The war created an environment where nationalist sentiments among Ukrainians began to grow. As Ukrainians fought in the war, they saw it as an opportunity to advance their aspirations for greater autonomy and independence. b. Impact of the Russian Revolution. 1917. The Russian Revolution of 1917 marked a seismic shift in the political landscape of the Russian Empire and Ukraine. February Revolution. The overthrow of the Tsarist regime in February 1917 led to a provisional government taking control in Petrograd, now St. Petersburg. This moment allowed for political mobilization and discussions of autonomy among various regions, including Ukraine. October Revolution. In October 1917, Julian calendar. November in the Gregorian calendar. The Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power in Petrograd. This event set the stage for further political turmoil in Ukraine. c. Ukrainian People's Republic and the Bolshevik Revolution. In the wake of the October Revolution, Ukraine experienced a surge in political activity and the emergence of the Ukrainian People's Republic, UPR, Declaration of Independence. On January 22, 1918, the Central Rada, a Ukrainian political council, declared the independence of the Ukrainian People's Republic in Kiev. This marked the first time in centuries that Ukraine had declared itself an independent nation. Bolshevik response. The declaration of independence by the UPR was met with hostility from the Bolshevik government in Moscow. The ensuing conflict between Ukrainian forces and the Red Army led to a complex series of battles and shifting control over Ukrainian territories. Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. In March 1918, the UPR signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria, that recognized Ukrainian independence. However, this recognition was short-lived, as the Central Powers' defeat in WWI and the subsequent withdrawal of German forces from Ukraine led to further turmoil. Civil War. The period from 1918 to 1921 saw Ukraine embroiled in a complex and multifaceted civil war. The UPR faced challenges not only from the Bolshevik Red Army but also from anti-Bolshevik white forces, foreign interventions, and internal divisions. The events of WWI and the Russian Revolution laid the groundwork for Ukraine's turbulent early 20th century history. The struggle for independence during this period foreshadowed the broader geopolitical and national identity issues that continue to influence Ukraine's modern political landscape and its relationship with Russia. 4. Ukrainian-Soviet War, 1917 to 1921. A. Formation of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, 1919. During the tumultuous period following the Russian Revolution, Ukraine experienced a series of political shifts and conflicts. Ukrainian Soviet Republic. In 1919, the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, Ukrainian SSR, was officially declared under Bolshevik control. This marked the establishment of a Soviet government in Ukraine and set the stage for further conflict with Ukrainian nationalists. B. Conflict between Bolsheviks and Ukrainian nationalists. The Ukrainian-Soviet War witnessed intense fighting and political maneuvering. Red and White forces. The conflict was characterized by a brutal struggle between the Red Army, Bolsheviks, and a coalition of Ukrainian nationalist and anti-Bolshevik white forces. This civil war resulted in widespread destruction and loss of life. Foreign intervention. The Ukrainian-Soviet War was further complicated by foreign intervention, with various countries supporting different factions. This included support for Ukrainian nationalists by Western powers, while Soviet Russia received aid from the Comintern and foreign communist movements. C. Treaty of Riga, 1921, and division of Ukraine. The war came to a conclusion with the Treaty of Riga in 1921. Division of Ukraine. The Treaty of Riga divided Ukraine along the Dnieper River, with the western part of Ukraine becoming part of Poland and the eastern part remaining within Soviet Ukraine. This division had lasting consequences for Ukraine's political and ethnic makeup. Consolidation of Soviet power. The treaty allowed the Soviet government to consolidate its control over the Ukrainian SSR, marking the beginning of Ukraine's incorporation into the Soviet Union. V. Interwar period. A. Ukrainian SSR within the Soviet Union. During the interwar period, Ukraine remained a part of the Soviet Union, and its political and cultural identity were shaped by Soviet policies and repression. B. Holodomor, 1932 to 1933, and its impact. The early 1930s witnessed one of the darkest chapters in Ukrainian history: famine genocide. The Holodomor, a man-made famine genocide, resulted in the deaths of millions of Ukrainians due to forced collectivization, grain requisition, and political repression. It had a profound and traumatic impact on the Ukrainian people and left deep scars in the nation's collective memory. See World War II and Ukrainian nationalism. World War II brought further challenges and complexities to Ukraine. Ukrainian Insurgent Army, UPA. The UPA, a nationalist insurgent group, fought against both Nazi German and Soviet forces during the war. They sought to establish an independent Ukraine, although their tactics and alliances evolved over the course of the conflict. Nazi occupation and collaboration. Ukraine was occupied by Nazi Germany, leading to collaboration by some Ukrainian nationalist groups. This collaboration remains a contentious and complex issue in Ukrainian history. 6. Post-World War II Soviet Ukraine. A. Reconstruction and Sovietization. After World War II, Ukraine underwent a period of reconstruction and development under Soviet rule. The Ukrainian SSR became an industrial and agricultural powerhouse within the Soviet Union. B. Ukrainian SSR during the Cold War. The Cold War era brought further Sovietization and political repression to Ukraine, as well as tensions with Western countries. C. Dissident movement and Chernobyl disaster, 1986. In the latter part of the Soviet era, Ukraine witnessed the rise of a dissident movement that advocated for political and cultural rights. Additionally, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986 exposed the shortcomings of the Soviet system and galvanized calls for greater openness and reform. 7. Breakup of the Soviet Union, 1989 to 1991. A. Perestroika and Glasnost. The policies of perestroika, restructuring, and glasnost, openness, introduced by Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in the late 1980s, led to greater political freedom and expression in Ukraine. B. Role of Ukrainian independence movement. During this period, a strong independence movement emerged in Ukraine, led by figures like Vyacheslav Kornilov and Vyacheslav Havel. This movement advocated for Ukraine's sovereignty and independence from the Soviet Union. C. Declaration of Ukrainian Independence, 1991. On August 24, 1991, the Ukrainian parliament declared the independence of Ukraine, following the failed coup attempt in Moscow. This declaration marked the end of Ukraine's status as a Soviet republic and the beginning of its journey as an independent nation. 8. Complex legacy of independence. A. Economic challenges and political instability. The period following Ukraine's declaration of independence in 1991 was marked by significant economic challenges and political instability. Economic transition. The transition from a planned economy to a market-oriented one was arduous, resulting in economic shocks, inflation, and job losses. Many state-owned enterprises struggled to adapt to a market-driven system. Political turmoil. Ukraine experienced frequent changes in leadership, characterized by corruption, cronyism, and a lack of stable governance. The nation's political institutions were still developing, and corruption became deeply entrenched. B. Ethnic tensions and Crimea, 2014. Ethnic tensions and the annexation of Crimea in 2014 brought complex challenges to Ukraine's path to stability. Annexation of Crimea. Russia's annexation of Crimea in 2014, following a controversial referendum, not only violated Ukraine's territorial integrity but also escalated tensions in the region. Ethnic diversity. Ukraine's diverse ethnic makeup, including Ukrainians, Russians, Crimean Tatars, and others, added complexity to the situation, with different groups having varying loyalties and concerns. C. Euromaidan protests and the Orange Revolution. Ukraine's history since independence is also marked by two notable pro-democracy movements. Orange Revolution, 2004. Mass protests erupted in response to allegations of election fraud in the presidential election. The peaceful movement, led by Viktor Yushchenko and Yulia Tymoshenko, resulted in a revote and signaled a commitment to democratic values. Euromaidan protests, 2013 to 2014. Sparked by President Viktor Yanukovych's decision to reject an association agreement with the European Union in favor of closer ties with Russia, the Euromaidan protests were a massive display of public discontent. The protests ultimately led to Yanukovych's ousting and the pursuit of closer European integration. These pro-democracy movements reflected Ukrainians' aspirations for political reform, transparency, and closer ties with Western institutions like the European Union, IX. Russian annexation of Crimea, 2014. Background and justifications. The annexation of Crimea by Russia in 2014 was a pivotal moment in the ongoing conflict. Historical context. Crimea had historical ties to Russia, including its role as a part of the Russian Empire and the Soviet Union. Russia justified its actions by claiming to protect the rights of ethnic Russians in Crimea and citing historical connections. Strategic importance. Crimea's strategic location on the Black Sea made it a valuable asset for Russia's military and naval interests. Control over Crimea also gave Russia access to natural resources, such as gas reserves in the Black Sea. International response and sanctions. The international community reacted strongly to Russia's actions in Crimea. Sanctions. Western countries, including the United States and European Union, imposed economic sanctions on Russia in response to its annexation of Crimea. These sanctions aimed to pressure Russia to reverse its actions. Isolation. Russia's actions in Crimea led to its isolation on the international stage, with diplomatic repercussions and exclusion from various international forums. Conflict in eastern Ukraine. Donbas region. Following the annexation of Crimea, conflict erupted in eastern Ukraine, particularly in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, collectively known as Donbas. Pro-Russian separatists. Pro-Russian separatist groups, with alleged support from Russia, declared independent republics in Donetsk and Luhansk, leading to armed conflict with Ukrainian government forces. Ceasefire attempts. Multiple ceasefire agreements were brokered, but the conflict persisted with sporadic fighting and territorial changes. Humanitarian crisis. The conflict in eastern Ukraine resulted in a humanitarian crisis, including displacement of civilians, casualties, and damage to infrastructure. Understanding the complex legacy of independence, the annexation of Crimea, and the conflict in eastern Ukraine is essential to comprehending the ongoing challenges Ukraine faces in its pursuit of stability, territorial integrity, and democratic governance. Ongoing conflict and humanitarian crisis. Key players and factions in eastern Ukraine. The conflict in eastern Ukraine involves several key players and factions. Ukrainian government. The Ukrainian government, based in Kiev, represents the central authority in Ukraine and is engaged in efforts to regain control over the Donetsk and Luhansk regions. Pro-Russian separatists. Pro-Russian separatist forces in Donetsk and Luhansk, often referred to as the Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, and Luhansk People's Republic, LPR, have declared independence and seek closer ties with Russia. Russia has been accused of providing military support, including troops, equipment, and funding, to the separatist forces. However, Russia denies direct involvement and refers to the separatists as volunteers. Impact on civilians and displacement. The conflict has had dire consequences for civilians in eastern Ukraine. Casualties. Thousands of civilians have been killed or injured as a result of the fighting, including women and children. Displacement. The conflict has led to a significant displacement crisis, with hundreds of thousands of people forced to flee their homes. Many have sought refuge elsewhere in Ukraine or in neighboring countries. Humanitarian challenges. Access to basic necessities like food, water, and medical care has been severely limited in conflict-affected areas, leading to a humanitarian crisis. C. Attempts at ceasefire and peace negotiations. Numerous attempts have been made to achieve a ceasefire and negotiate a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Ceasefire agreements. Multiple ceasefire agreements, such as the Minsk agreements, discussed later, have been brokered, but they have often been violated, leading to sporadic clashes. Peace talks. Negotiations involving representatives from Ukraine, Russia, the separatist factions, and international mediators have taken place. These talks aim to address issues like a lasting ceasefire, political autonomy for the Donbass region, and the exchange of prisoners. Psi. International involvement. A. Role of NATO and Western support for Ukraine. Western countries, including members of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, have played a role in supporting Ukraine. Sanctions. The US and the EU have imposed economic sanctions on Russia in response to its actions in Ukraine. These sanctions are aimed at pressuring Russia to de-escalate the conflict. Military aid. Western countries, particularly the United States, have provided military assistance to Ukraine, including weapons, training, and non-lethal support. NATO partnership. Ukraine has pursued closer ties with NATO, and the alliance has engaged in capacity-building efforts to enhance Ukraine's military capabilities. B. Russian involvement and support for separatists. Russia's role in the conflict remains a subject of international concern, denial, and disputed involvement. Russia officially denies direct military involvement in eastern Ukraine, but evidence suggests otherwise, with reports of Russian troops, equipment, and logistical support in the region. Support for separatists. Russia has been accused of providing backing to the separatist forces, both militarily and economically, which has contributed to the ongoing conflict. C. Minsk agreements and diplomatic efforts. Diplomatic efforts have been made to resolve the conflict through the Minsk process. Minsk agreements. The Minsk agreements, brokered by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, outline a roadmap for a peaceful resolution, including a ceasefire, withdrawal of heavy weapons, and political reforms. However, full implementation has proven elusive. International mediation. Various international actors, including the OSCE and the Normandy 4, comprising Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France, have been involved in mediating negotiations to achieve a lasting ceasefire and political settlement. Conclusion. A. Current status of the conflict. As of the present day, the conflict in eastern Ukraine continues, with sporadic fighting, ceasefire violations, and ongoing diplomatic efforts to find a lasting solution. B. Importance of a peaceful resolution. The conflict in eastern Ukraine has caused immense suffering for civilians, strained international relations, and disrupted the stability of the region. A peaceful resolution is essential to mitigate these consequences and promote stability in Eastern Europe. C. The future of Ukraine and its geopolitical significance. Ukraine's future remains uncertain, with questions about its political direction, relationship with Russia, and aspirations for closer ties with Western institutions like the European Union and NATO. Its geopolitical significance as a bridge between East and West underscores the global importance of finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict and ensuring Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.